this. Be it 7:01, I'd like to call to order the Economic Development Subcommittee for April 27th, or April 2nd of 2026 to order. A note to residents, all citizens are welcome to attend public meetings in person. To view the live meeting remotely, citizens are encouraged to watch the live stream on Franklin Town Hall TV YouTube channel or the live broadcast on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 29. Meetings are recorded and archived by Franklin TV on the Franklin Town Hall YouTube channel and shown on repeat on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 29. To listen to the meeting remotely, citizens may call in using the number 1-929-205-6099, or to participate in the meeting remotely, citizens may join a Zoom webinar using the ID number of 853-196-7858. Any participants who wish to speak during the webinar must enter their full name and email address when joining the webinar. All participants will automatically be muted upon entering the webinar. In order to speak, participants will need to select the raise hand function to request to be unmuted, and all speakers will be required to state their full name and street address before commenting. That's how we waste 5 minutes of the meeting with that stuff.
You don't actually have to say it.
Really?
No.
Now that we say it, now you tell us. Now you tell us.
I just wanted to let them go through the process once. It's only one way to learn.
Well, then we're not going to talk about that.
It's only 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Seriously, we don't need to at least let them know it's on live TV or anything like that? Maybe not the Zoom stuff.
It's on the agenda. I mean, none of this is even required by law to do.
Really?
No. So we put it on there since the pandemic to make sure people know how to access all the stuff.
Well, let's get back 2 minutes for our meetings, even the council meetings. Let's do that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I said it so why don't we stop talking about it because we're wasting my time.
Okay, exactly. All right, since this is the first meeting, we have our 4 wonderful committee members here. Myself, Councilor Morrongiello,
Chair LeBlanc.
And she's Malloy.
There you go. That's the committee.
Check.
Any more than that, it'd be a quorum of the council, and we'd have a different issue to have. So with that, the number 2 item on the agenda was the economic development profile. I don't know, Jamie, was there anything in particular you wanted to highlight in that information you sent out for us as kind of a primer?
No, through Mr. Chairman, just wanted to get out some of the profiles and some of the data points just to help the committee focus on its work. The only point I would say is, and I forgot to add the pages on the original one, I think Max has it up. I left a copy with all of you real quick, which is the master plan implementation section, which is only a few pages. I highlight that because, obviously the master plan went through a pretty long and public process. You don't have to do any of these items. You can do one of them. You can try to focus on a lot of them. But that's the only other one I'd focus on. I'd say the Franklin for All study, there's a few items on there that never got done. I don't think because of any issues with the items, but some of them are complicated, like 40Rs. But a lot of those goals did get done, and then I obviously included in here this afternoon as I was getting ready for this. As I said in one of the memos, if you didn't get a chance to see it, all of a sudden my brain was going with EDC, and I just thought I'd put out a list to all of you to help you just try to kind of contextualize some of the work that we've done in the past 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, some of the accomplishments. And as you can tell from the memo, we've never really had any dedicated staff on this issue, so it's really been Morena's predecessor, Brian, and Gus, and just myself and the deputy town administrator doing some of this, but there's nothing else there to discuss. There's no votes. I just wanted to give information to everybody to kind of give everybody a background of where we're at. And that's it.
Okay. With regards to the 2016 to 2026 achievements, were there, in those lists of achievements, I didn't have a chance to fully read it before, but were there any of those achievements that, while they are considered an achievement, there really is still more that you think that there's still more to do? Like, is there 1 or 2? Obviously, I think there may be many, but is there anything that jumps out of that list that says, yeah, it's an achievement, but we only took the ball halfway down the field?
Yeah. That's a great question. I would say Yeah, the arts and culture piece is still growing. I think we've all hopefully seen the imprint of what that's been like the last couple of years, basically since Corey's been here, but even after we were a cultural district in 2019. Not exactly sure what exactly the task could be after that, but I think at some point when Corey's available, we may want to have a conversation with her about that type of issue. But there's nothing else on here other than the master plan goals that I think, and also number 13, the new style on 300 Fisher Street. Those are issues that'll be continuing to go on. Those two properties are properties that will be in cleanup for a long time, but they're finally starting to get some real good momentum through certainly Morena's efforts with the recent grant and $500,000 towards the new style from ARPA money. And once those buildings come down and DEP has a chance to evaluate that, that's a centrally located parcel right at the top of Grove Street. That's a good piece of land. So if that can get cleaned up and you look at where that parcel connects to other parcels in the industrial park, Forge Park, that's something down the road to continue to keep our eyes on. And 300 Fisher is booked to come in to do a full council presentation in July or August. I can't remember the date, I think it's July. They're ready to go out and do a public outreach effort this coming fall. 300 Fisher is at the end of Fisher Street where the DPW is. It actually connects to the SNET trail that we just purchased. And so it's an old rubber manufacturing facility site. It is have some contamination on it. It does have PFAS. It will take a long time to remediate, but those are two parcels that will continue on and will have some economic value down the line. Other than that, I think most of what's on here are mostly done. The last type of thing I would say is restaurants. We can always have more restaurants. We have our first restaurant week, and thank you to all of you. But in all seriousness, I put on here the no quota piece. Unlike every other town, we have no quota on liquor licenses for restaurants. Meaning, if Rentham or Norfolk or Medway, if they need a liquor license, if a restaurant comes to their town, they have to go petition the legislature, and it's about a year long before that business can get that restaurant license. You guys just approve them, and they can open up. So at some point, you know, while we've done a lot, that might be another one that if we want to do marketing or, some sort of outreach somewhere, we could probably try to go to like restaurant conferences or I don't know, stuff like that and see if we can try to get any more restaurants. But other than that, I think most on this list is pretty much done. And there's probably not too much more to do on these topics. I think the master plan is probably the document that people would focus on.
Right. Okay. Just before we move off of that document, if anyone has any questions specifically about that document, please bring them up. But I did want to talk about the new style.
Sure.
Because that existed when I was on the council 20 years ago.
It did.
It's right.
I think that's when you took it.
Yeah,
Right,
literally. It was 20 years ago. So, like, when is the end point for that? Like,
So
is there? He's laughing over there. But when is the?
Well, for 15 years since you were gone, nothing happened. We'd apply for grants, get rejected. We tried to sell it twice.
Yeah.
We had one bidder. We had it under contract, and when the time came to pay for it and record it, they left. So we put it out to public procurement a couple times. So it was a lot of fits and starts. Ever since we did the ARPA money a few years ago, where we used $500,000 of town money, and then there was another grant that was matching at the time. And then in addition to that, the $250 that Morena's recently been awarded. The end game is, at some point when we finally have the financials to remediate the entire site, you're probably looking at least the end of the decade, I'm guessing, probably at least another 2, 3, 4, 5 years. First things first is we gotta get the structures down. And then after that, we'll be finding out what the next steps are in terms of remediating that site.
Well, you just mentioned the word financing or whatever the cost. Like, do we know what the total cost is going to be to remediate that space?
Do you guys have any guesstimate?
No.
It's probably gonna be millions. I would say 7 digits for sure.
Once they, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Morena, Finance Director. Once they actually go in and we've awarded the bid, we've got a contract that's being signed, and all their certificates they've got to get to us. So hopefully that will be sometime next week. We'll have a signed contract in place. We're hoping to get the work started on the actual demolition. As Jenny said, there's heavy metals, there's asbestos, there's contaminated water. So once we get the building removed, once we get the foundation removed, that's this piece of the project. Then we have to actually go and do more testing in the ground, in the wells, see what actual contamination there is. And then the plan is to apply for another DEP brownfields grant to hopefully get the money to clean up that portion of it. So it is, you all know what a grant timing looks like. It is a couple years off at this point. But hopefully before the end of the decade.
So this is where I do a cost benefit analysis, meaning is it better to just sell the property for $1 and have the developer pay the cost of all that so that the building goes up faster, or is it better for us to pay to do all that remediation? What's better, the chicken or the egg in this equation? And I'm not asking for the answer to that question today, but that's how we analyze.
We tried twice to do the dollar and got left at the altar.
But if we do this one step, I guess, where we take the buildings out and there may be another $1 million that has to get spent, but now that we've taken care of a large piece of it, the buildings, it may be in a better sellable position.
Yes.
I think we need to look, because it's more, to me, it's more beneficial to put the structure up and
we do have to take into account that it is a sensitive area. It is right up against Pine Brook. We don't want to continue any contamination that might be happening. So if we're able to get to these grants and do the remediation, that is something that we should explore.
And we can certainly, when we're done with the building takedowns, I think working with DEP, we can try to get an idea of, to your point. I totally agree with you. Because of all the cleanup in the buildings and all that stuff we've already done, maybe there's more of an appetite for somebody to buy that. I think what Morena is also pointing out is it's such an awkward site that for somebody to buy that, the person that put a bid on that, by the way, would be neighbors. So it wasn't like there was a widespread investment group coming in saying, oh, we want that property. It was literally the guy with the kitchen, the granite countertop store right next door. And then I think he probably got shock value in the cost of cleanup. But we can look at it when all this is done at the end of this year, calendar year roughly, fall. We can certainly look at it again and certainly try to see if another procurement might get another buyer for more than $1. Because at some point we're starting to get, to your point, we're starting to get to a point where the site's getting ready to be more cleaned up, which means there's more value to it.
Correct.
I have a question when you're ready. First off, we did just get a grant for that, another grant for that property, correct?
Yes.
So that was $250,000.
Yep.
And then that's on top of a $500,000 grant we got in the past. That's not taxpayer money. That's usually federal, state money that taxpayers don't have to put the bill for that.
Yes, exactly.
Everything, and this is nice people for that, I don't know if we're ready for this yet, but we have the economic development goals from the master plan. And originally when we had the goal setting process, I had to kind of wing it in terms of putting together some goals that I thought would move us forward. But I'm hopeful that as a committee, for the Economic Development Committee, we can come to consensus on some things on here that might be better fit for getting the ball rolling and actually moving Franklin forward. I know I recommend like form-based code, and that's a heavy lift. I'm open to replacing some of those things with things that this committee supports. That one thing, for example, is like encouraging businesses to have shared parking, so that the businesses in one lot can park in a different lot, and they get an exemption from the stormwater tax. That's something that we could push, because I always hear people complaining about parking. So things like that. There's a lot of things on this list that we can do and make things better for Franklin residents. And I'm hopeful as a committee we can try to knock some of these off.
You referenced the master plan, all that stuff. So ultimately, it gets down to really item 3 on the agenda, which is the purpose of us being here tonight, which is really to kind of go through the goals that we have outlined, and quite frankly, to hear other thoughts of the four of us of other things that we really want or desire. So with that being said, why don't we start, Jamie, with the 2026-2027 EDC goals? If you wanted to spout them off, or if you want me to read them, how do you want to?
One is the home rule tax legislation that's already been filed, 2%. I think the restaurant week is in progress, which are great. And then I think the next section was the master plan implementation goals, which was on the section here that I handed out. And then the fixed transit routes, the climate leader designation, the Beaver Street Recycling Center, form-based code, the 40R smart growth, the SNET parcel, and the Schmidt Farm. I mean, a lot of those goals, are indirectly related to economic development, but they're not really directly economic development, right? So I think some of the idea here was to leave all of you a more wide open input, right? To say, well, Restaurant Week is an economic development thing, and that's a good vibe effort. But also, I know other members probably have rezoning concepts. There's a lot here on the master plan. I mean, at some point, you might want to just walk through each of the goals on the master plan and just see from the members, is there anything that strikes a spark that you guys want to do? And just look through the list, and Gus and Morena and I can comment if something's feasible, expensive, not realistic. But I think we're looking for guidance, at least from this list, of what you guys may be interested in doing, or other things that aren't on this list.
Well, what I'd like to do is, if you're all in agreement, is Max, you start, and just what are the things that you'd like to see that may be already on the list, or let's just put it out there. As I always say, let's put our 10 poll out there. Let's see what it's looking like.
So I think one of the things, I do think we need some easy wins. So I think having some smaller goals, like is requiring usable entries to face the sidewalk. Is that easy or hard in terms of a zoning change?
What do you think?
I'm talking about, did you say sidewalks?
Yeah, ED 1.1D is just talking about how we make downtown more vibrant. And one of the suggestions in the master plan was require usable entries to face the sidewalk. So you don't have a door going out to the side, it faces the sidewalk. Like, is that something that's a crazy zoning change, or is that something more simple?
Sorry, I was to say, Council Building Commissioner, and through the chair. I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I think first you need developers downtown. You need that vibrant change, so to speak. And it's easier, obviously, if the building is taken down to reconfigure the way it approaches the sidewalk. We did have someone at Tech Review, I think 2 weeks ago, that was looking to buy tear a building down in the downtown area and build new. And I know that Morena has come up with some sort of I'm going to let her speak on this, some sort of a approach to how aesthetically a building should be built with this form-based code. And I think it's a brilliant idea to put things in place, because the developer will come in a lot of times with what they want. And I think this whole program has a lot of legs. And I'm not saying not to look at this now and produce it or talk about how we want to move forward with this form-based code. But groundwork, slideshows, everything that's here, I don't know if this includes a slideshow or not, or a slide presentation, but maybe if it's up on the screen, we can pick a building as a template to look at how we want to see it approach the sidewalk and come up with all these goals. I just think it's a great idea. We haven't had a lot of luck with people wanting to do things in the downtown, as we all know. And we need to attract that. And some of the buildings are old, tired buildings that don't attract people to the downtown as much as they possibly could. I know it costs money to do these types of things. Morena comes with a great background from Somerville that the ideas that she's told me about that this community had, Somerville had, encourages it in a way that is not too forceful, but it's not the way we have approached it in the past, and I think that it really needs to be like that, and I think she's the lady to do it.
So just follow up.
Don't pressure.
Follow up.
We kick things down. We kick the can down the road with Roberts a lot, and what she brings to this whole job that she's taken over is enormous. So not to make her head swell or put too much pressure.
That's what we're
I don't, like I said, I wasn't sure about form-based code because I know it's a lot of work. Is it something that you in your office is passionate about, as asking for, as well as what are, in addition to form-based code, what are some easy wins that you feel on this list that you could knock out and sort of make downtown a little bit better?
What is that?
Keep on doing it.
Okay, I can
Thank you, Gus, for all the kind words. So form-based code, we have it in Somerville. It is 600 pages long, right? When you look at that, it's not appropriate for Franklin. It was too much. It is too much. It's a little bit too much for Somerville also. They've realized that since they put it in place. But what I was really enthusiastic about was I went to a citizen training collaborative conference last weekend, and they had a form-based code light seminar, and it was a company, I forget the name, but they were sort of showing how you don't have to go to that extent. They actually use Somerville as the example. You don't have to do 600 pages. You can get the community look that you want without having it be so robust. So I was telling Gus, this is something that I think would be great, especially in our downtown areas or the crossing neighborhood, to try to get folks to produce the buildings that we want to make the neighborhood attractive, so that you're not just ending up with one long flat walled building and not having sort of any textures or breaks in the building or different sort of roof heights and things like that. So I think that with and this would be a medium-term project, I think. And I'm hoping that it's something that we can sort of achieve in the next maybe year and a half. And it is something that we'd want to have community input about, but it would be, we could tackle something about like where the door space, what sort of dormers you want. Like you can get into as much detail or as little detail as you'd like, but I think it's something that would fit the town and that would help us sort of achieve the look that we're looking for.
Thank you. And I do hear so much about I think even in the survey for the master plan and for the community survey, the big thing was about the character of the community. It was a big thing for people who I think it has a broad section of appeal for people who want to preserve character. Is there any other initiatives? Like, do you think you have the capacity to do sort of shared parking, or is that a big lift?
So I would quickly say on shared parking, so we do have a capacity. The issue that you're going to face is you're giving certain businesses a tax break to do something that may or may not be needed, and why do they get a break on stormwater when others don't? That's going to hit people. We've heard about it before when we do stormwater stuff. So, I know that was like the benefit, but it's tough, right? Because you're starting to say the downtown businesses where there is parking already. And I still don't understand exactly why there's no parking, and people complain about no parking when there's just tons of parking. So what we do, if you guys decide you want to do the shared parking concept and bylaw, we can absolutely. That is something that's probably an easier win or a more shorter-term digestible project. Form-based code is not easy. That's very, very complicated endeavor. That's not something that you just do. That's not like shared parking, we could bring you a concept in a couple months or something. Form-based code is like a multi-year thing. I think the easy win on that is how do we engage downtown property owners, right? I think if we're all talking about downtown revitalization, there's a lot of value in the master plan about this. How do you revitalize downtown? And we've done the streetscape, we've done the two-way, we've done the banners, we've done the lighting, the trees, the decorations. We've helped coordinate the beautification days, the downtown partnership. The town seems to be doing a lot, but the property owners don't seem to be doing much. And I think the challenge for all of you is how do you want to engage those folks? When we did the Franklin for All study, I recommended at the time, but it didn't get done, was to maybe have a forum downtown. Maybe not on camera, maybe not in the chamber. Inviting them in, and trying to do some sort of event and network building or something to try to see exactly what the limitations are, what their visions are for the property, right? Rock and Trust, for our property, Mr. Pacini's, Mr. Neri's, like all of those properties, like what do they see in the next 10 or 15 years? Depot Street Plaza, right? Because I think there's only so much we can do, but I think we have to find a way to engage those folks to find out why they're having much progress downtown. I think the people
Mike, yeah, thanks for bringing that up, James, because that was kind of on my list of looking individual goals and so forth. I want to sort of maybe think about this in a broader concept of downtown and the crossings. So what has to happen first, second, third before we get developed? And that was going to be one of my questions for tonight is how do we talk to those property owners? There's obviously some recalcitrance there to do something, so can we understand what that problem is? Can we incentivize some development? Can we, try to steer this in a way that without even a code plan or even overall design, can we get people interested in doing something? Getting started, and then kind of, we have that interest first, maybe there's more flexibility or a little bit more impetus to come up with an overall design plan. But I just feel like how long is the Acapulco's restaurant running?
6 years.
Is he going broke? Is he not?
No, I talked to the owner 2 or 3 times a year. He just called me about a month ago. I do think finally, I will say, on wood, they've hired some local firms for the first time. I think there's a reasonable, I don't know the right word, but it's probably the most doable rendering and proposal of Depot Street I've seen in my 10+ years. So I'm hopeful that they may even get to a point. They're probably closer to filing to do something with the planning board than they've ever been, certainly in my 10+ years here. So I think that's a good sign. We've redone all the zoning downtown, so I don't think that's an incentive. I think my particular opinion is, I think the elected officials or other stakeholders, maybe the partnership or dean or just some other people, need to find out from them, what do they want? Is it some sort of, are they just looking for the standard tax break or something? To be truthful, and I feel shameful saying this, they didn't really even attend any of the Franklin for All studies. They didn't show up at any of the meetings. There's a gap there. There's a network gap. I don't know if I'm articulating that right, or if that's the right word, but I think, and I had proposed doing the forum for Franklin for All on Main Street. Like literally shutting down the road and putting up chairs on Main Street. To say, you can't walk out of your front door from your business and come out and sit in a chair and tell the former EDC members what it is you want. Is it a new zoning proposal? Is it an overlay district? Is it nothing? Just tell us something. And the reason why I say that is when Jeff Jennings became town manager in 2001, ironically in 2003, he went out and did a whole MAPC study on downtown. And then when I took over, or got here in 2016, we pulled out the folder. Nothing has changed in 15, other than the streetscape and some of the beautification efforts. And then we went and did the Franklin for All study, and still very little engagement, very little attendance. And so it's been very hard to find. I think some other councils in the past too, I think Council Morrongiello did, I think tried to knock on the doors, go in and meet one-on-one, and it just continually seems to hit this like wall of nothing. So with the new group here, it might be something we think about in spring and summer, is how do we engage with those folks? Do we just have a breakfast with the 20 property owners and get some people together to try to understand exactly what the problem is? Because I think I'm kind of, I feel like we're almost done with what we think would work, or what our professional associations think might be some good ideas. You know, we just need them to tell us, like, what are they looking for?
I agree, and it's their property.
It's their property.
So you would think they have an interest in the future and development. Obviously, there's something broken where the status quo has just been so long. And if this hasn't been done like that before, then we should make an effort to try to do that. And maybe for the crossing area too, like, you know, as we have done all that zoning over and there's more opportunities now. One of my questions is going to be, you know, has there been an organic growth in proposals or inquiries or whatever? So we've done the zoning, you know, how come it's not, how do we take it to fruition now and have people become interested in doing something?
And to that point, I mean, we could do a couple of just basic charrettes, not complicated stuff, you know, just networking, breakfast items, a couple hours, you know, engaging people, maybe even making it less formal in both neighborhoods. In the crossing, I think there has been more organic investment. I mean, the old mill store, 305 Union Street in particular, you know, Mr. Kaplan buying that. Because we own the SNET now, I'm giving him a temporary license to be able to access an area in the back of the mill store that's required by DEP and the Conservation Commission to get cleaned up. So we're helping him, you know, trying to give him a lever to make his business easier. He's going to be doing that work, you know, probably in May. So that's good for him to get a head start by using the access point. If we didn't have that access point, we would have had to have taken down another building on the property. We would have delayed it maybe another year. So we're trying to work with them to do that. So I think the 305 Union is a great example of that organic. Acapulco's just picked up and left. That was another organic piece, right? You read about the artist experience bylaw we put into effect in 2017, and it's not a surprise that Mr. Vezella has risen to the occasion. And so I think there is a little bit more of that organic.
Seems to be, yeah.
Mr. Halligan and some other people in town, real estate folks have bought some other parcels down there. I think over the next 5-6 years, you're going to see a few other parcels. You know, so that kind of vibe is going on in the crossing, and as we know, the SNET track is coming up, you know, getting pulled up this week. Once that's graded, I mean, even if it's not perfectly graded, I guarantee you people are going to start walking on it, which is a good thing, right? So you got the Children's Museum opening, like I think all of that has been a lot of organic activity because, you know, people knew we were working on the SNET. People knew we were working on the zoning. So I think there's more investment. And there was a joke at a downtown partnership meeting a couple meetings ago when Rep. Roy and I were talking about all these things. And we were using these as how you do economic development. And a few people joked in the room and said, well, time to buy homes down in the crossing. And Jeff and I were like, yes. Because then somebody's going to fix the front porch, repaint it. You know, that's how you get that activity going. You know, and I hate to say it, and it's very sad, and I don't mean it in a very critical way, but, you know, the downtown strip, the main triangle, just has not had that same organic investment feel. We thought it was going to come after the rotary change, you know, the changing the two-way street and the beautification efforts by Lee Mason and everybody, but it just seemed it was not quite, kindling didn't quite, you know, spark more fire, so it's just, for some reason it just hasn't happened.
I would say that it would probably pull all forward. Downtown revitalization is probably number one on the list. It's a long-term thing, but it's probably not, because from an economic engine standpoint, I've said this before, we need somehow, in addition to the normal growth that we have, that gets added to the tax levy, which is about $60 to $80 million worth of new kind of value. We need to somehow create $300 million more on top of that over the next 5 years. Because we need to generate $3 million to fix our structural deficit that we keep on talking about. So that we don't have to cut or reduce or stay status quo. We're going to grow in size as well, but we need to somehow, people may not like it, we need to have development. It has to be smart development. And one of the areas that can be a very large engine that is downtown. To that point, since everyone knows that I really wanted to be on this committee because it's a passion of mine for economic development. Before I even joined the council, I'd actually reached out to UMass Boston. They actually have an urban development program. I reached out to the chair. The chair forwarded me on to one of his professors. That professor is John Wiggins. I've talked to him a couple of times. He actually has a grad level class. It's a 750, 700 level class. That class, I talked to him. That class starts in the fall of this coming fall, and they would be happy to do an urban development plan for the Triangle and the Crossings for free. What that entails is, I'll read you this snippet of what the course is. It provides students with a hands-on experience in developing plans that enable government agencies to direct housing, economic development, or physical infrastructure initiatives that improve quality of life for residents, workers, and visitors in specific urban neighborhoods. Such plans should reflect participation by a broad range of stakeholders, demonstrate social and environmental benefits that exceed the cost of development, and incorporate values of sustainability, local involvement, critical perceptive on the role of planning and urban development. Clients will benefit from the plans that help them achieve short-term development goals as well as help fulfill organizational missions. To me, this is what I see. My thing is, no one knows what the vision of downtown looks like. If someone saw a 3D model of what downtown could potentially look like that building, instead of it being 2 stories, is 3 stories, and it's got texture to it, it's not a front facade. If someone saw a 3D rendering of that, they'd go, wow, there would be, I hate to use the word public pressure to take to a building and say, this is what it could be, and it's looking like this. And or know that if I built that, it would generate this amount of income. Right now, they don't know what they don't know what they don't know. And I say when they as the property owners. But if we show them your building that's this many square feet, and 2 stories, it'd be now 4 stories and generate this much, or sell the land and it's not worth. They know what the land is worth. I think the best thing about this is someone will do that plan for us, and it won't cost us anything. The only ask that they have is. Professor Wiggins is asked to actually come in front of this committee and explain a little bit more what they would do. And then obviously it would require it would require some of the staff time to answer the questions that they have. They do that outreach that we talked about. All that stuff that you just talked about, they would be willing to do that for literally free. Now, they're not professionals, they're students, but this is grad level stuff, so they're not a freshman in college doing this. This could be people as old as me doing this stuff, just decided to go to grad school for it. So to me, this is a win-win for the town. It doesn't cost anything, and this would basically tie into the form-based code that you talked about. That whole thing, literally, we could be sitting here next year at this time with a package that is presentable to the community.
And Mr. Wiggins, I don't know him very well. I know who he is. UMass Boston is actually my alma mater for master's degree, so I'm pretty familiar with that. They could also make it base their parcel concepts into that. I do agree with you on 3D modeling. And maybe they can be a part of our networking charrette. You know, just some exercise we just talked about. They could lead it if they want to with you guys. And just try to engage those owners into some sort of additional visioning. And I think that's where the Franklin for All study missed one mark, was they didn't really generate any visual to the landowner to say, okay, you're doing well here. And things may be kosher, but if you thought about what your property could be valued at, if you thought a little bit larger, what you said, they don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So if you want us to try to schedule a professor to come out, link us up. I can try to get another meeting, you know, May or June or whatever, and see if they can come out.
Yeah, he definitely would sooner rather than later like to have the meeting with us, because he's trying to prep for his class in the fall and wants to know, like when he said, "You sure you want to do this?" I'm like, "I just got to get the committee together." But we kind of, I said, "We're stupid," but then this is free service to give us something that we need. So the sooner the better, because he's trying to plan for his fall, because I don't think he was thinking I'm going to have a real life example, and I just gave him a real life example. So
Will he finish that by December?
So it'll be part of his fall class. It may have to drag a little bit into the spring session to finish it up, but the core of what will be done in that fall session.
Chair?
Yeah.
So I was going to say, I just want to know the controversial about the matter. Do you want to go first?
Well, I was just going to say, having been on the other side of that in the program as a graduate student who went out and did real life, practical hands-on work, although without the benefit of having a professor-led, the results are incredible, right? You have people who are, their role is to study this and make it happen. And I've been part of several projects like that. They went into effect. They were incredibly productive and effective. And I love the idea, and I really appreciate the initiative in reaching out, because I think that's actually a really incredible opportunity for the town. Thank you.
I did want to ask, I know we talked in one of the meetings about the parking meters, and I was just wondering if we could have a quick part of the meeting where we just go over and make sure they continue to be the best fit for the town, and we can do like hour parking instead, if that's a better fit. And then the other thing is, I know this is kind of a third rail, but I do want to acknowledge that the LIV policies will expire in a year. So I just want to make sure that we have something that we can come to consensus on to move forward together collectively, that we can also get behind. So I'll build to what's going next.
And I agree. Yes, all about that.
Can I get up and say?
Yeah. I think it's just awesome.
I wanted to say something before I forgot it. Could I say something before I forget to say it?
That'd be great, thank you.
Susan, on 520 Maple Street. The other day, when I was walking back from Vendetti Senior Center, I recall, I think, a court case maybe years ago, I don't know, 10 years ago, that involved Representative Walker at the corner of Raymond and West Central and Beaver. Maybe some part of dividing the land and make the curve easier. It just occurred to me that when I do take that curve, it's hard to navigate. And I remember in the 1980s when the road was one way, Mr. Valley donated some of his land to shave off so the train trucks could go through and turn, and they ripped up Evans Street and repaved it. But I didn't know if anyone could comment on that parcel of land that Mr. Walker had. Some lawyer from West came in and said, cease and desist, and if there's any progress on the litigation, or is there anyone who knows anything about the case involving Representative Walker and that parcel of land on Main Street, if anyone knows anything about it?
We just want to caution that it's not on the agenda, so I don't know if we talk about it.
I don't know, I'm not even sure what the reference is. So I'll look and talk to Steve afterwards, but I don't know, I'd have to know a little bit more. I just don't know the litigation between the town and, well, I can tell you there's no litigation between the town and anybody on Raymond Street or whatever. So I'm not,
I just thought there was years ago.
there might have been years ago, yeah, I don't know anything about it, so.
Take it under.
Sure.
Thank you. Is there any, Councilman, is there any other goals that you have that you want to put out there that haven't added to the list? Or you told me what I'm looking to get out of this, or I'm personally just trying to get, what is our other things that we want to get done?
Jamie just mentioned about the Davis Fair site and the status of that. I think, to me, speed is important. We've been debating this back and forth. I had some discussion about it in executive session, but I think I'm trying to think of doable things that we can look back in a period of time and say we did something about that and solve that problem. So I think that's kind of what we can improve. I wonder in commercial development, economic development, similar to the downtown areas, do we have, or should we reevaluate or look at the relationships we have with the commercial property owners in town, similar to what we're talking about for downtown? Some of the industrial parks, do we know what the vacancy rates are there? Do we work with those property owners to help them fill vacancies or plan for the future? I know we don't have full-time resources associated with this, but maybe that's a topic in and of itself that we look at. And if we can invest in the right resource, maybe the returns are clearly pay for themselves. I'm just trying to think more proactively without the minutia of particular building codes and so forth, as to find what those problems are and see if we can advance those solutions. And maybe work, I think that might be the key first, and then the zoning and the coding and what we need to do to that.
What else is on the list?
Just marketing for Franklin, maybe it's related to economic development and lack of resources there. What do we do to market Franklin restaurants, for example? Do we work with the Restaurant Association? Do we actively market what we can do and what we can offer in terms of all of the economic, resources that we have, population, the spend, the restaurants, that sort of thing? Is there more proactive activity that we can take on to look for in some of those kinds of businesses?
I think it's a great idea. I think you referenced you're going down the pathway of having some dedicated staff to do this stuff. These are the things that Amy and I generally triage with Morena's predecessor and some of the other staff. I think you would get a good bang for your buck. Marketing, I think some of the budget numbers have been cut over the years. We've had to trim those. But we've never had a real strategic game plan with, do we want to do ads in the annual restaurant show at the Boston Convention Center? I'm making something, right? But to that point, are we in the game? Are we networking with the right people who are saying, hey, Franklin, same thing with the industrial park. This has come to the business summit concept that was in my memo. That I failed to mention when Mike asked me, Amy and I talked about having a business summit at a location where hotels, industrial park owners, downtown businesses, like all sectors could get together and network. Hey, we have a business clientele at the hotel for a month. Are you getting catering? Are you getting food? Are you taking your team out to dinner at Glen Farmer? Are you going over to this restaurant? Are you going to the chateau? You're supporting your local folks. Do you know what Allegra does training for your event? And just trying to get people to spend money within themselves instead of online or whatever, and trying to get people to know one another. One of the things I've come away with for a long time is there are a lot of great networks in Franklin, but I've learned the industrial park issue is a very big, they're over there and they don't know really what's going on over here, and they're not totally connected to the hotels, which they should be, and the hotels are not totally connected to our local restaurant base. So I think, you know, the idea of just trying to get it gathered together would like to start, right? But that obviously takes, you know, some time and, you know, some coordination and effort. It's a big, I've done a lot of my coordination in my career, and it's a lot of work. But to your point, those are the kind of things that you're talking about. How do you facilitate those? But I think those are certainly gaps in selling our reputation, which is a very outstanding reputation. And you read the quote in there from Mr. Costa next door, but we get comments like that from business owners all the time. So our reputation on permitting is one of the best you'll find in the area. So I'm not really worried about the permitting stuff, maybe some of the code issues. I'm more concerned, like you said, about getting our name out there in these broader swaths of investment groups, and they're saying, hey, that town's a safe town, their schools are top notch, hey, maybe that's the place to be. And you gotta go, and my view, you gotta go to the conference. You know, that's like me or Morena going to the seaport, paying the $300, getting a booth, or just having materials. That's showing up in that network, right? That's maybe some of you guys going to those events and saying, hey, you know, volunteer council is taking the time out to go to this stuff. I mean, stuff like that.
I like to think we can eat and drink ourselves out of our financial problems. And now that you mentioned the easy liquor license process for restaurants here, I would think that's a big advantage in that industry, right?
It's a huge advantage. The closest community to ours is Marlboro. And then South is like not even existent. You know, there's a map that was in the Worcester Business Journal at some point a few years ago, and I think there's only 20 communities in Massachusetts that have that.
I think there's a lot of residents, a lot of business, you know, within 20, 30 miles here, you know, probably big spenders who like more higher-end restaurants and have that opportunity. I think that may be a target we should look at and see how we can facilitate that.
I agree. I think it was a great idea, especially the industrial park too. And just to be clear, we don't know the vacancy rate. Years ago, we kind of, when I first got here, I think Brian kind of knew it just from his own institutional knowledge, but we don't pair people up. We sometimes do. It is something communities can do. If you're in that network with mass development, and you're in those networks of the major property owner up there, you know, they go to their thing and wherever they network, and we're not a part of that, but I think over the years, here and there, I think, you know, we were a little bit a part of it, trying to help business owners, what they call it, but there's no you know, set thing we do as a staff to try to play that.
I think it might be worth looking into to
Absolutely.
try to do that and try to develop those relationships.
Absolutely.
And, you know, we wouldn't know if they're vacant because their tax payments are due, whether they're empty or not.
Correct.
Right? So we don't really have great connectivity into that. But I think if we kind of develop those relationships, talk to them, what leases are coming up, are they going to renew, you know, are you guys going to stay, anything you can do to help, you know, just being out in front of it, might not be bad. Yeah, because we have a great infrastructure and all of that, you know, that presence here.
Great buildings, the hotels do very well here, and then there's obviously a blip for 4 or 5 years, but they rebounded pretty well. We did it one time, I was getting the 3 hotel, now 4 hotel owners. I was connecting with them once a year, and then the management started changing every year, and the pandemic hit, so that some of those. But we've always been trying to do a little bit of these things, and I don't mean to harp on it, but obviously staffing is a big issue. I mean, you're not going to get any of these items if we don't have money.
And maybe we can help leverage some of that as our committee too, to invite them to meetings and just, what do you need, how can we help you, what are you looking to do, so maybe we can help with some of that.
Absolutely.
You got free time.
Yeah, two things I missed. One, I know we talked about council about getting fixed cost with SkyTrack. And I think that can be something that is somewhat economic development related, that we could work together on. And just getting some information before we present it to the council, to this committee. The other thing, I just have an easy win for Corey. I see one goal here, highlight the district's cultural heritage through street decorations. It sounds like an easy win. I think we could probably check that off. Does that sound fair?
Yep, it's a D, it's you see here, it's DACCE, which is Corey and DPW. I think we've done it in the triangle area, as you've seen, and I think, you know, once the SNET track gets ripped up, I think we'll take a look at that as an easy thing to try to see if there's something on the crossing that we can help. It's a good idea. Maybe there's a way we can start bringing Union Street a little bit. You know, telephone pole, again, maybe it's just trying to identify a section, and maybe it's painting sidewalks, I don't know, you know, it's just to try to get that kind of cultural feel, but I agree, that's an easy one.
You all set, Steve? You have more?
I think that's pretty much it.
Okay.
All right, good. I know you said we're going to start, and we don't need, next time I'll speak. All right, so I've got, actually a lot of what I has been said. But so in the idea of marketing, you know, we have this, you know, desire for an economic development director. We've tried it, it hasn't taken. What about something that's like part-time or even a shared service with local communities? Like we were talking about getting Franklin out there into Boston, going to Never, you know, is there some way that we could do some sort of shared service where it's less expensive for us? We have someone still doing the work, although it's not a full-time role. So that was a thought that I had. But for the most part, I think, I also wanted to look at possibly, do we have some sort of way, and maybe this would be, again, down the path of the economic development director, but some sort of easy process to get industries or companies in, like someone who kind of helps them get them through everything, get through all the funding, get them through the whole process, to make it easier to attract and to get them in. So those are my thoughts there, but I do think that, along with what Max said, and in the meantime, we should be focusing, I think, on some of those, that beautification of downtown, getting Corey to do some of the murals, working on the, you know, the SNET trail, improving the vibrancy and access, getting, you know, whether it's like a story path or something like that, to get people over there, especially as they connect to the Children's Museum. Anyway, so those were some of the things that I wanted to see, some of the smaller beautification things that we could do. I'd like to see more things like our Harvest Festival, things like that, more large activities where we shut down the roads, we get everyone in town out, and in the downtown area, getting them into those local businesses, and maybe that is also another way to push those landlords into filling those vacancies and beautifying those the buildings that are not in the best of shape at the moment. So those were some of my ideas.
All right. I got mine. I don't know, a few of us mentioned an economic development coordinator. I will say this, I don't know if I'll get it tonight, but hopefully before we get to the end of the budget season, I hope I can convince the three of you, and then maybe hopefully one other person, that when we fund the 2027 budget, there is funding for that position, not part-time, but full-time. Economic development is a case where you have to spend money to make money. If you have to spend $100,000 for a person, that person will bring in 100 times that value in the long run. All the things that we've talked about. One of my goals, what is our commercial land, what is our commercial vacancy rate? Because unfortunately, while they pay a tax bill, that tax bill is predicated as to whether or not there's someone in that building. That tax bill is predicated upon the revenue of that building, not the value of the building, the revenue. So if there's no one in that building renting space, when they go to value that building, it gets valued for less than if it had someone in it. So it behooves us to have that space 100% occupied. That's why when you do look at property values downtown, I look at those and I go, well, how can I build that? And it's because it's based on the valuation of the assessors, on how they have to do it. It's how they have to do it. So if there were more people in there, so there is a benefit to filling that space, to sell that space. So we do need someone out there marketing that. We do need to know what's out there for available commercial land. I know there's a lot of residential land, but I do think we need to know how much commercial land is out there that can be developed. And while we may know it, we need to know what's buildable. What are the possibilities of that? And that's what an economic development coordinator would do. So to me, I'm going to continue to advocate it. I think I said it as my stake in the sand for the budget. I'm going to somehow convince 4 other councilors to support that as well, because yes, it's spending money and people want us to cut or find a way, but that is, you have to spend money to make money. That is what smart business people do. We're a business. We're a $150 million business. That's what we are. We're a government, but we're also a $150 million business. To Jamie's point about connecting hotels and businesses, I don't know if they do this today, but the hotels give the businesses a discount. You tell them, you come to my hotel, instead of going to Milford, you come to Franklin. There's like, that's what I did with, when I travel to Baltimore, my company has a special rate for that hotel and everyone stays at that hotel. So how do we interconnect those two things? But again, that's not, it shouldn't require us to do it. It shouldn't require Jamie to do it. It should require an economic development person to do that. All that stuff, because we get those businesses that still come to stay in those hotels. That's hotel tax, that's money that's not even coming out of Franklin's residents. So in some way, shape, or form, I'm going to continue to pound that until I lose my breath. We have to spend money to make money. So hopefully I can convince the 3 of you and tow someone else along to get that into the budget for this year. Other thing I'd like to know, and I hope this is an easy win, is of the current commercial properties that have come before the planning board in the last, I'd say 5 years or so, how many of those projects have not started? Like what projects are approved and have literally not even, the shovel's not in the ground? Because I want to understand why the shovel's not in the ground. I literally want to know why that building hasn't gone up. And it could be because the market's changed. So what do we need to do to make that property attractive? Again, because they never want to put a warehouse. No one's putting a warehouse up anytime soon. So what else do we need to do to make that piece of property attractive? So I would like to know kind of what's out there and figure out how we get the shovel in the ground. Because again, without a shovel in the ground, I can't get the $300 million. We got to get shovels in the ground. I do want to. One of the reasons why I ran was how can the town councils help the process of developers coming in front of all of our boards and expediting the process. I see all these projects, whether it's 440 or whatever, they just take way too long. We got to streamline that process. It's supposed to be 60 days. In my opinion, it's both parties have to be ready to get this done in 60 days. You can't continue. We can't. It's 60 days, folks. So let's get it going. So whatever, I want to understand that. I'd like to have, as we talked about, I'd like to have a presentation on that whole process. How do we streamline that process so that it truly, whatever the timeline is, you know you're going to come in front of a Franklin Planning Board or ZBA, and you're going to start on this day, and 60 days later, it's either approved or not approved. The one thing I learned in the project in Bellingham, that's right behind mine, when it's lasted forever, and a lot of the goalposts keep on getting moved. It's an iterative process. Bring your plan, and either approve it up or down and move it on. So I'd like to have a presentation about that so we can, because that's part of economic development. You have to, just as you said, Jamie, the more attractive you can get a liquor license here in 2 seconds for a restaurant. I want to give you a building permit in 5 seconds. So how do we do that? There's got to be a way to do it. We talked about GATRA. I agree with you, Max, we need to have a presentation on that, because that to me is a pure economic development situation. I do want to figure out how we do empower the design review commission more. Because right now, to me, that commission is like that's like a sign commission. They gotta, I want to figure out how they get involved, whether it's the form, how they approve all the way the buildings look on 140. They're involved in that look and feel that you have to get somehow that it's design review. It's not a sign review. So I want to understand that committee and how we do that. In fact, that was a goal. To be an approving board of otherwise enforcing design reviews, okay? Let's have enforcers. I do want to talk about our historical district. So we did talk about that about a month or so, or 2 months ago at a council meeting. And again, that's more of a, we need to form that. And I just mentioned the historical record of the Franklin planning cycle, and that's where I talked about the process. That was that, and I had one more. And I mentioned it in a meeting about a month ago, the sign bylaw. I want to look at that again. Like I said, we need to find a way to make businesses more attractive for folks from the street. And at the same time, as I complained about, take down signs when the businesses aren't there in the first place. So I do think we need to bring that up. So specifically, I know hopefully small, Jamie, as it relates to the sign bylaw, how much of a lift is that? Or do we even know what the scope of that would be to make the bylaw more creative so that it allows for various signage and stuff like that?
Morena staff's the design review committee. They've started talking about this. There's two different issues. There's one that's the approval of the signs, which has a statutory issue linked to it in terms of an overall site plan relative to the planning board. So in terms of them just rubber stamping signs, being the authority, versus their recommendation to the planning board is going to require the town attorney on that. However, I think in terms of the guidelines, and in terms of the rules around signs, the enforcement of it, I think that's where the design review guidebook, I'm kind of passing this baton, that was like kind of the cue. I think that's where we're looking for a grant to help fund this, but I think, for whatever reason in the past, and I've said this to Sam Williams a million times, like, he's always called the committee kind of like difficult or useless, and I say it's useless because you're not guiding in to change the rules. You can go ahead and change all the rules, propose all the zoning changes, propose the guidebook. Let it just go ahead. Nobody's preventing you from stopping that, and I think now they are finally feeling like they have that.
Right. So on Tuesday, they actually met here in Council Chambers and had Corey was here and Earl was here, and they actually had a discussion about sort of what they want to see changed regarding signs, regarding the look of buildings, regarding site plan review that they do. And as Jim just mentioned, we are going to apply for a one-stop grant with MAPC to hopefully help us with this project. So the project can be sort of as small or as big as we get funding for. At the very least, we'd like to get the design guidelines brought up to date and modernized because they're 20 years old at this point. So working on that, I think changing things like the dimensional requirements, where you can have signs and how many signs you can have. That's a relatively easy lift. They had some concrete ideas of how they wanted to handle that. It was a recorded meeting, so we can post it online, or we can send you a link if you want. There'll be minutes. But they did have sort of an overall conversation with Corey and Hellen about talking about art and murals and how do we get more vibrancy, and I think that they're really excited about tackling this project on. And we will need sort of some assistance to get us through the larger pieces of it. But we're going to file and try for some money, see what we get.
Can you require the signs to be in Comic Sans?
That's kind of what I think. The sign bylaw hasn't been rewritten in probably 9 years. I think right when I got here, there was some tweaks, right?
Not a lot.
There's not a lot. And then there's issues of LED signs. There's a lot of stuff around signs. Then there's you will get a lot of blowback for light pollution. There's a whole other demographic of people that don't want bigger signs, don't want more signs, don't want Las Vegas, right? Like that kind of thing. So, but we agree that this would be a great priority, and I think it would be a great economic development tool. And it's sorely needed and updated. There's no question about it. I just hope design review really takes the lead on this, because they're the ones that are seeing all the applications. They've got some institutional knowledge, and I think with these two folks here, I just hope they really, so if you're friends with anything on the design review, like encourage them to really take this on with a lot of passion, because I think there's a lot of appetite in town.
Was there any value in putting them in here?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of alluded to it already. I think, how do we permit? You can't really do that without a planning board member, a ZBA member, a conservation member. We can go through a synopsis of tech review, and we can tell you, like, when we go through tech review with a prospective business owner, we tell them all the time, file a planning board and conservation concurrently, right? So they're going through the permitting process together. And I'll tell you, and Gus will say this, and you can probably Steve and Morena, most businesses will tell you they don't do this in every other town. So it is, we do a lot of things to make the permitting easier. The length of the hearings, is a two-pronged issue. One, you can't, at some point, and I mean this respectfully, public comment has to get trimmed back. Like, it just, at some point, and I go to a lot of these, it's the same arguments over and over and over again for months on end about how to obstruct projects. Sorry, that's just what happens. The ZBA, for example, goes on their hearings way longer than they should, because it's just consistently the same stuff. To your point about like the rules changing or the goalposts, that's hard to referee, because in this world, in Massachusetts, it's not a popular place for this, like California. We are a very highly regulated state on these matters, right? Wetlands, conservation, GDP. And the reason why we're regulated heavily on this stuff is because everything within inside 495 is basically built out. And so the struggle our state is having is, do we go up or do we go further out? And that's a tough question, right? I mean, that's like the Milton issue with MBTA communities. Everybody who lives in Milton bought a house that was a single-family house generally, and they bought into an acre lot or half-acre lot in a pretty affluent town, and they invested their money in that real estate. They, at least the people that live there now, say, why do we now need to be 4, 5, 6 stories? But you're literally on you're on the city of Boston's line, like you're not out in the burg. I think all of Metro Boston is going through this reflection point of we're built out, so what do we do? And as a result of that, everything we do is just unfortunately highly regulated. And a lot of it has to do with many of the situations that y'all are familiar with in Franklin. I mean, it's in every single town. So I don't know if there's a lot that we'll be able to do about, oh, now the Conservation Commission wants us to do another thing over here. The ZBA asked us for a balloon study, or there's kind of moving goalposts. Some of that is just, I think, a part of the structure that we have for permit. But I think we can have all of those boards come in at different times. I think they'd be more than welcome to talk to us about ways that we can improve, or the way the council can improve. So I think those are fantastic ideas, and certainly wrong with them.
With that, does anyone have any other items they'd like to bring up tonight? Anything to bring up before? No? I'm just listening. I'm looking at you.
I did want to say, I know we looked at the goals in blue, the Economic Development Committee goals, but I think traditionally some of the other goals on the master plan, I mean, there's a lot of them. I don't expect to do more than we put on. But in terms of housing, in terms of public transportation, sustainability, those also, even though they're not economic development, have traditionally come before the EDC. So I just want to point that out in case we ever want to revisit other ones in the future. And that's all I got.
All set.
We are now producing this in collaboration with Franklin TV and Franklin Public Radio. This podcast is my public service effort for Franklin, but we can't do it alone. We can always use your help. How can you help? If you can use the information that you find here, please tell your friends and neighbors. If you don't like something here, please let me know. Through this feedback loop, we can continue to make improvements. And I thank you for listening. For additional information, please visit franklinmatters.org. If you have questions or comments, you can reach me directly at suresteve@gmail.com. The music for the intro and exit was provided by Michael Clark and the group East of Shirley. The piece is titled Ernesto Mañana, copyright Michael Clark and Tintype Tunes in 2008, and used with their permission. I hope you enjoy. By the way, you can also subscribe and listen to Franklin Matters Radio on your favorite podcast app. Search in podcasts for Franklin Matters.